Hello, my name is Jeremy Coolidge and I am a sophomore at Beverly High School. I first interviewed the mayoral candidates in 2023. I was in 8th grade and trying to get Beverly's first youth council off the ground. I am happy to say that the youth council is starting its second year. Today I'll be interviewing Mayor Mike Cahill and City Councilman Brendan Sweeney, who are running for mayor of Beverly. I want to thank them both for being here, as well as BevCam for allowing me to do this again. I will ask both of the candidates questions that are primarily focused on youth issues. With all that said, let's move on to our first candidate. And now, City Councilman at large, Brendan Sweeney.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. It's great to be in the BevCam studio with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
Of course.
I guess I'll just jump right into it.
Yeah.
My first question, there are a lot of offices in
Yes.
City Hall, and every department is run by the mayor's office, and you appoint the people. Do you think that the office of City Hall should offer more internships in every department, to high school and college students?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jeremy. I'll just start off by thanking everybody for listening in. For those who don't know me, my name is Brendan Sweeney. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm an at-large city councilor running for mayor. My day job is working as the assistant town administrator and finance director in the town of Boxford. That actually segues well into your question, Jeremy, when it comes to internships. Mm-hmm. So I started my career in municipal government as an intern for the town of Wenham when I was attending Gordon College as a student there. And that internship, while I was based in the town administrator's office, gave me insight into a whole host of different operations when it comes to municipal government. The assessing office, the treasurer's office, I worked with the permitting office, even police and fire. So I think that those type of internship opportunities are the best way to get somebody who, like myself, was interested in municipal government into the field. Right now, we have a few internship opportunities. I know that the planning department has interns. But what I'd love to see is some sort of comprehensive internship program run out of the mayor's office. As you mentioned, the mayor is the city's chief executive and is responsible for oversight of every aspect of municipal operations. Obviously, with the schools being unique in that there's a school committee appointed to oversee the policy with a superintendent. But even so, the mayor is an integral part in every aspect of city operations. So what I'd love to do is create an internship program based in the mayor's office where interns have the opportunity to shadow some of the various departments that report directly to the mayor. Finance, public services, public safety, the assessor's office in particular, for those like out in the field, permitting and otherwise. And I think that would really give interns an opportunity to look under the hood and get a holistic view of how city government operates. Because there's so many great career paths within city government, and we don't have enough people, especially as folks get closer to retirement, stepping into those jobs. So that's absolutely, if I'm elected mayor, something that I will plan to expand upon, our internship opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. My second question, what actions as mayor will you take to keep young people in the city as they grow older to live, work, and raise families?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question, Jeremy. It's one that is very personal to me. My wife and I think, are still categorized as those younger families. I feel a little bit older at 30, but I know that's still considered young, even if my back aches sometimes when I wake up now. But one thing I think a lot about with the two of us, so we are renters. We are starting a family at the end of this year. We're expecting a boy in December, and we're very excited about that, our first child. But that's something I think a lot about when we look at the housing market. It's very expensive to buy in Beverly. We're fortunate where we are now. We've been for a number of years. We get a good rent. We're right downtown and enjoy the neighborhood. But at some point, we know that our family is going to outgrow the apartment we're in. And one thing that I think we need to create more of in order to help with some organic turnover in the housing market are smaller multifamily units, which it's a term that I use and that others in the municipal government use a lot. It's called the missing middle of housing. And so one thing that I would like to see the city do is look strategically at areas within our city where we could create that type of multifamily housing, smaller multifamily, duplex or three-family homes, without altering the character of the existing neighborhood. And those smaller multifamily units are more naturally affordable and offer home ownership opportunities that large-scale apartments do not. The biggest challenge is making the economics work for a developer. And so that's something that I intend to look further into if I'm elected mayor. I think that those type of housing units would allow younger families like my wife and I to be able to get a foothold in the housing market. They would also give opportunities for seniors looking to downsize that want to stay in Beverly, but they may not want to go to one of the bigger apartment buildings on Rantoul Street. If we have that missing middle housing, they can downsize from their single family home and open up more single family opportunities for maybe someone who, younger family, couple of kids, has their first house, is looking to upgrade. Those type of opportunities to allow people to move through different stages of life with their family within the same community are incredibly important. Additionally, what I think is really important is how we as a city are communicating with residents, and in particular young families. We right now as a city, while we get out a high quantity of communications, I don't think that the current administration communicates as effectively as we could. And why that's so important, coupled with being more transparent when it comes to the decision-making process, is that allows younger families who are young professionals who are working and oftentimes don't have a ton of time to dedicate to city government. It allows them to stay tuned in without disrupting their day-to-day lives. And if they stay tuned in, then they're more likely to engage at city council meetings, to reach out to the mayor's office, to make sure that their viewpoints are being heard. And the more folks that we have engaged in city government, that collective buy-in, the more people are going to want to stay here because they know that their voice is impactful in shaping the future of our community. So improving upon that communication and being more transparent with how we make decisions are ways that I think will help, in addition to some of the more tangible housing solutions, keep younger families engaged here in Beverly.
Yeah. You kind of answered my third question too, which was about housing and how it can be unaffordable here in the city.
Definitely.
And many young people going out of high school that want to live in the city find it hard.
Yeah.
And it's just harder housing market and apartment. We have so many apartment complexes, I feel, but I don't feel like they're being used to the best extent.
Yes, and like I said, there is a role for those apartments in our larger housing ecosystem. Now, I think we've kind of built up that aspect of our housing market. I've talked to folks, while I think there are benefits to development, I don't see a carbon copy of the development on Rantoul elsewhere in the city making sense. I think that would be out of step with the character of many of the other neighborhoods of Beverly. And so that means that if we're going to look to housing solutions, but we're not looking for more 5-story apartment buildings, that's where we need to get creative. So that's something that I intend to look into and really work with developers, work with state agencies that could provide credits to the city to help make the math work for those smaller multifamily units. And just for anybody watching, if they're in the same boat, if I'm elected mayor, you will have someone in the mayor's office who is dealing with these challenges. Renting, looking to buy in an unaffordable market. That's a perspective that will be front and center as the city determines how best to address the housing challenges.
Yeah. What do you think you could do in your position as mayor to incentivize the city to, in small businesses to really hire younger people? I work at Shaw's and on Dodge Street, and but Shaw's and I think like Henry's are the only places that like employ 14, 15-year-olds and a few stranglers here and there. But I really think that more small businesses would benefit from more hiring more young people, and if they had more incentive from the city or, from local government, I think that would be good. So I just wanted to know what you would do as mayor.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that there's a culture in City Hall that is accessible to those small business owners, that they know whether it's, specifically like how to build up our teenage workforce or just more generally challenges that they're having staying afloat. I want to make sure that those businesses know that they will have a mayor who is willing to partner with them. I want to make sure that I'm accessible as mayor. And I've actually been fortunate enough to work as the city council's liaison to the Economic and Community Development Committee. which is made up of business representatives from a whole host of different industries, and we talk about the future of Beverly small businesses. So that's certainly an issue that's already on my mind. One proposal that is tied more directly to your question about how can we help these businesses and create an environment where they will hire more teenage workers and allow folks like yourself that are breaking into the job market and want to get some experience, that'll allow them that opportunity. And this is actually a solution that would need to take place at the state level. But one policy that was introduced years ago by former Representative Brad Hill would have introduced a teenage minimum wage. And that would have been slightly lower than the current state minimum wage, with the intention of giving businesses flexibility from a payroll standpoint where they're now incentivized to hire more teenage workers from an economic standpoint. And it would open up opportunities specifically for employees under 18 to get that experience in grocery stores, in restaurants, in sub shops, which actually brings me to the local tie-in. Our former city council president, Paul Guanci, spoke in favor of this proposal a number of years ago in testifying to a panel of state legislators about how that, if we had a teenage minimum wage, that would allow him at Super Subs to bring in those teenage workers in a way that he's really kind of constrained from financially now, since they're competing with workers with much more experience. And so the dual benefit is that helps him hire desperately needed positions, but also provides the teenage workers with real world experience working for his sub shop or for a restaurant or otherwise. So as mayor, I would love to work with Representative Bowen or Senator Lovely, our two legislators on Beacon Hill, to see if that proposal is something that could be considered again because of the benefit that it would have for some of the small businesses here and for folks like yourself who are looking to break into the workforce.
Yeah, thank you. What specific pieces of legislation in City Hall will you do that will introduce that will directly affect young people in Beverly? And this can go, you're a city councilor now, so like what have you introduced? And that will you in the future as mayor?
Yeah, as a city councilor, I've introduced a handful of pieces of legislation. They're less so tied directly to young people. And so when I think about what I have done or areas that I would want to focus on that would help young people in Beverly, I always come back to the Beverly Public Schools. Our schools are our largest aspect of our city operations, and for good reason. Public education is incredibly important, and we want to make sure that we have a very strong school system here in Beverly. And so I think that's first and foremost. If I'm elected mayor, I will be partnering with our teachers, our paraprofessionals, and our school administrators to make sure that the Beverly Public School system is as strong as it can be, and that we are positioning students for future success. And I know we have some challenges there, especially at the middle school. When I think about the size of the school, both in the aggregate, it's the largest middle school in the state, but with individual class sizes, we've had some issues there. I think about some of our highest needs learners, our special needs learners. Do we have the capacity in our in-district special education system to service their IEPs? In my conversations with teachers and paraprofessionals, that's an area they've identified where we're lacking. So I think that's first and foremost the area that I would address as mayor that has a direct impact on our young people. But on top of that, I want to make sure that we as a city are building off of the success of the Beverly Youth Council. And I know you're a member there. Partnering with that direct representation of folks, under 18 but are actively involved in our city is one of the best ways that we can get direct voices into the conversation from those impacted, the young people, about what Beverly can do for the future generation. And so I plan to lean pretty heavily on the input from the Beverly Youth Council because that's such a valuable perspective that you all provide to the city.
Right. Thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you for serving.
And, speaking like not really legislatively, but, just like in general, what other things for the youth will you do as mayor, just to kind of, either whether it be help with like the youth center or other things?
Yes. So I'm glad you bring that up. One thing that I think a lot about, a real public resource we have in Beverly, we have parks across the city in various neighborhoods that offer opportunities, for young kids and especially for the young moms who want to get out of the house for that recreation. And so what I really want to make sure is that we are maintaining our parks across the city, from very notable ones like Lynch Park to some of the smaller neighborhood parks in our city. And so this is something I've been thinking about that provides a real opportunity for the city to collaborate directly with the Youth Council on. So there's a concept in municipal government called participatory budgeting. And basically the idea is that you set aside money and you bring in outside stakeholders beyond just the traditional policymakers, the mayor and city council and school committee, to provide direct input on how funding is allocated. And I think maintenance and improvement of our parks is a perfect opportunity for us as a city to implement that participatory budgeting concept. So what I'm thinking is that the city already puts some funding aside in its budget to maintaining parks across the city. And oftentimes the recreation director and the public services director are the two that have the most influence on which parks get renovated and when. And I think for good reason. They're folks with the subject matter expertise, and they really should be a big part of that decision. But a voice that I would like to bring into the conversation that's not currently present is the voice of the Beverly Youth Council. I think you all could really take on the responsibility of, around the city, looking at the various parks and noting which ones need improvement, and then talking with the ward councilor for those parks, talking with residents in those neighborhoods that are visiting those parks, and getting that feedback plus your own experience, I think could provide a very valuable perspective to the city when we determine how that maintenance funding is divvied up amongst our various parks. So I think whatever the formal structure is, having that voice introduced to the conversation from the Beverly Youth Council is very important. And so that's something that I plan to partner with the Youth Council on as mayor. How are we divvying up funding to maintain and improve our parks across the city?
All right, that's all the questions I have. Do you have anything else you'd want to share concerning like the youth or anything?
Well, now that we have a little bit of time left before the end of the show, maybe I'll give you a moment. Maybe we can just have a little back and forth dialogue. Obviously, you're somebody that's been very involved, or else you wouldn't be here interviewing me. I mentioned you're a member of the Youth Council. Are there any areas that you see from your perspective that you would like the city to recognize going forward? What areas do we need to improve upon that you see, whether it's the school or elsewhere, that you think the next mayor of Beverly should be keeping in mind?
Well, obviously, the mayor serves on the school board.
Yes.
And the school committee. I would like to see much more civics classes. And, like here in Beverly, in Beverly High School, we don't have like an AP Gov class, an AP US Government class, or, we have, in senior year, you do Preserving Democracy, which is like a project-based learning kind of, thing that you do to learn about like democracy and stuff, but I feel like it could be more. And in 8th grade, you have one civics class, but then you really have not many options in the high school. And there are a lot of people I feel that want to go into government and politics in that world, but you don't get there by just a public speaking or a criminal justice class, because that's really all we really offer, as well as like history and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I went to Ipswich High School. We had AP Gov there. That was one of my favorite classes. So I would love to institute something like that here. I didn't know we did not have AP Gov.
Yeah.
And I know that the state has really made civics a more standardized portion of the holistic curriculum. So it's no longer just viewed as this extracurricular, take it as you have the time. It's now viewed as a core subject alongside your standard science, math, English, and general history classes. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, like in 8th grade, civics and history was like merged, and we called it like civics class, and that was a core.
Okay.
But we really don't have that here in the high school. And I feel like out of all the career paths, because we do have career paths for education, hospitality, other things, I feel like we could offer a public service career path or something, or like even like law.
Yeah.
If a student wants to study law, that we really don't, but I feel like we could implement in the future.
And another question that you asked me, which I will seek your input on here while we're sitting here. I think that's a great point, and I would love to have a civics course focused not only on what's going on at the national level and how the federal government is structured, which, to be clear, is very important, but I'd love to get students engaged in what's going on at the state and the local level. And I think tying in those internship opportunities at City Hall would be a great way to do that. Do you think if the city were to expand internship opportunities, like what I was discussing in answering your first question, a fellowship of sorts in the mayor's office, do you think that there are folks at Beverly High School, like yourself or otherwise, who would be interested in those career paths? Is service in local government something that people your age are considering, or not as much?
I do know people that would like to serve in government in some way.
Okay.
You know, whether that be work for nonprofits or, you know, just in Congress or on the state level.
Which is great.
Really not on the local level, but I feel like that's kind of because they don't know much about local government. And it's an education bit, because even in 8th grade civics class, we barely learn about local government. And I feel like having that and just like doing it and like learning about local government more and like who your local leaders are, what City Hall actually does, because they do the most out of all 3 branches of government.
Yeah, that's what I tell anybody who listens.
Yeah.
Local government has the most direct impact on your life. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be concerned about what's going on at the state or national level, but don't forget to vote in your local elections, because those elected representatives, the mayor, the city council, the school committee, have such a big impact on your day-to-day life.
And and I feel like students should, you know, be educated more on local government, because then I think the interest would arise, because there's so many career paths in that field, you know, engineering, planning, auditing, you know, whatever.
Running those elections, that's all done at the local level.
Really could be used to, you know, get young people involved, because they would want to do some of those stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's, you know, as a professional in local government, we talk a lot about what can we do to engage with that next generation, because we need young leaders to step into these positions. I'm very fortunate to have a good team in Boxford, but I know, as I mentioned, I'm the finance director. I oversee 3 departments: treasury, assessing, and accounting. My treasurer and my town accountant will be retiring in the next few years in Boxford. Those are great opportunities for students who have a financial mindset but are civic-oriented and they want to serve their community, to step into pretty significant roles of responsibility.
Yeah.
So how we engage students with those opportunities is really something that's at the forefront of my mind now, and will be even more so if I'm elected mayor.
Yeah, and I think that goes well with just like education around civics, because again, there's so many different departments that we could be focusing on like educating the youth about. And yeah, I just think that's a really important thing to focus on, and like locally.
No, I believe so as well. One other area that I'd love to ask you about, Jeremy, is I know that many schools, in ways to improve student performance, are trying to partner with local community colleges to offer those opportunities, as well as offering programs in specific trades to give students a skill set when they leave Beverly High School. Obviously, there's other players involved here, the local community colleges, which are overseen by the state, as well as our regional technical high school, Essex Tech, which offers programs exclusive to the school. But from your experience as a student here at Beverly High, do you think that there are room, that we are doing those things, we're offering opportunities to learn a trade or opportunities to take community college courses? Do you think we're doing that well now? And if not, is that something you think the mayor, especially as a member of the school committee, should prioritize going forward?
I think like the After Dark at the Tech and that stuff is very good, as well as dual enrollment at North Shore Community College and other community colleges around. I think that's very good. And I haven't heard much of the After Dark, just because my grade doesn't do it. You don't do it until 11th and 12th grade.
I know that's the older grades.
So I haven't heard much on it, but I know that it's a positive for people. I think that we should like do it more, and like, you know, just make sure that it's a very prominent and like well-known thing.
Yes.
And like get people more involved, because trades are so important to me. Like, I'm very focused. I wish the state would build more trade schools.
Yeah, me
just
too.
the few we have, but because those are the jobs that everyday people need, like plumbing, you know, manufacturing, and other things that you need in a trade school, and we need here. So I think that offering the After Dark is very good, and just like having that is a good thing, and I think it's executed, from what I've heard, well enough.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, and that's a big part of the reason why I ask, because if I'm elected mayor, a top priority for me will be expanding those opportunities for technical training and expanding our partnership with North Shore Community College for students who want to get those college credits while they're still in high school. Both opportunities are great pathways so that students, when they leave Beverly High, are well equipped for the real world, even if they don't go and seek a 4-year degree. And so as mayor, that's something that I'll be advocating for with our partners in state government to make sure that Beverly has the ability to build off of these programs so that students like yourself are able to seize those opportunities as you progress through Beverly High.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's very important to just get young people in a trade because they pay very well.
Yeah, those jobs are important. So,
and we need them.
yes, definitely. Well, I appreciate you letting me turn the table on you here, Jeremy, and ask you a few questions. Thank you for your insight.
No problem. It was great having you in this interview and having you speaking with us. I know that it's important for young people to get involved in government, but if they know what the candidates want to do with them and when they're older, and I think that's important, especially seniors in high school now can vote and register to vote. I think registering closes on October 25th.
Yes.
To register to vote, so if they can do that and they're 18, they can start voting for mayor and start making those decisions on their future.
Yes, and that's a very good point for those of you watching at home. Early voting starts October 25th, which is a Saturday, and then it runs through the following week. Election day itself is Tuesday, November 4th. So I would please encourage you, if you haven't already, make a plan to vote, not only for the election that I'm running in, the race for mayor, but for city council, both at large and ward seats, and for school committee, where for the first time in our city's history, we will have a mix of not only ward, but at large school committee members. When it comes to my election for mayor, there are really 3 reasons why I'm running. The first is that I believe I have the experience to do the job. As I mentioned in our conversation here with Jeremy, I currently serve as an at-large city councilor. My day job, since that's only a part-time job, is working as the assistant town administrator and finance director for the town of Oxford, where I manage the budget, I negotiate with unions, I manage our big capital projects, and I handle other special projects like our trash and recycling contract that I recently negotiated, which will be something that we really need to take a look at here in Beverly as our contract expires at the end of the year. And so the second reason that I'm running is that I believe it's time for a change. I've served with Mayor Cahill for the 4 years that I've been on the city council, 4 of the 12 that he's been mayor, and I greatly respect his service to the city. However, there are areas that I think the city could improve upon. I think city government could be much more effective in communicating information to residents, utilizing social media, the city's website. I'd love to see us create a podcast for these type of conversations, but with city department heads so that we can get more information about what's going on in their world. And so I think that's one area we can improve upon. I think the city could be much more intentional about planning for some of our capital projects. Right now, we just jump from project to project, whether it's our buildings or our road and sidewalks. And especially with our road and sidewalks, we need a multi-year plan with a clearly defined amount of funding, which both will set the table for residents to see what work we're planning to do over the next 3 or 5 years, but we'll also hold city government accountable for what we say we're going to do. And lastly, I want to make sure that city government engages directly with its essential employees, teachers, firefighters, police officers. It's incredibly important to me that the mayor is at the bargaining table. That hasn't been the case in Beverly, and I want to change that and bring my experience to the table. Lastly, I'm running because I'm invested in Beverly. As we talked about, my wife and I are expecting our first child at the end of the year, and I know that this is where we're going to raise our family. And I want to make sure that Beverly remains a great place to raise a family for future generations, both for my family, but for you as well, Jeremy, and for other folks in your generation. So that's why I'm running for mayor. As we talked about, the election is Tuesday, November 4th, and I hope that you will consider voting for me then. Thank you for watching, and thank you very much, Jeremy, for today's interview.
Thank you. And now, Mayor Mike Cahill. Mike, how you doing?
Jeremy, great to see you.
Nice. So obviously you're running for re-election for a 6th term?
7th.
7th.
I know, very quickly.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just get right into it.
Sure.
There are a lot of offices in City Hall on every department. There's so many different departments that vary, and the mayor's office appoints those officials and oversees them, all of them. So, do you think the City Hall could offer more internships for high schoolers and college level students?
First off, thank you for doing this. I mean, 2 years ago you did this as an 8th grader, which was very, very courageous. And now that you're in high school in 10th grade, I think it's getting to be a little hat for you to be in front of the camera. But anyway, I really appreciate it. It's an opportunity to share some thoughts on youth issues, and it's really important. So the question about internships. We do host high school seniors as part of their REACH internship. So we have a lot of internships in recent years in various city departments. As you said, there are 20 some odd departments in the city. And so that's one opportunity we have. Last summer, I had 3 interns who one was in college, 2 were leaving high school for college. And they worked right out of my office. And I know some other departments do summer internships. By and large, the internships need to be unpaid, just based on resources, and that's fine. Some young folks can't really afford to do a full-time internship unpaid, but that's okay too, because we have opportunities to do a couple days a week, and it's proved to be really a great opportunity. So yes, we do lots of internships, and we should be looking, and we are looking to do more. I think the more opportunities that we can help young people to understand local government, to kind of sink their teeth into a project, because that's the other piece of it. You want to make sure that somebody's time is well spent and worth their time. Anytime we have an intern, there is somebody, or there are some bodies, one or more people, who need to do all the prep work so that we can fully take advantage of a young person's talents and energy to get some meaningful work done. And so, that's a part of it, and yet there's always a lot of work to do. So I think when you think about it, yes, it's great that we do some, and the more we can do, the better. Any thoughts from your part on internships that you might see an opportunity to do that you're not seeing happening?
Well, I don't know. I think that if the city could offer just, do you have internships in the clerk's office and stuff like that?
Not all departments are set up to offer them. Mm-hmm. I will say that I didn't think of this one because it's a one-day thing, but every year we do the Student Government Day program with the high school. And so that's a kind of a quick hit of what goes on at City Hall. I know we've done internships in my office, in planning, and police department, and engineering, and others. So I think you mentioned the clerk's office because there's a lot that goes on there. That's one of the biggest, face-to-face departments who work with the community on a lot of things. Elections, yes, and a whole lot more. So that's an opportunity. I'm not sure if they did a REACH intern this past year, but I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think even if it's just shadowing, a person who works in the department or anything, just for not even a summer, 2 or 3 weeks even, to just see what they do, and more than Student Government Day, just more in depth than that over a longer span.
Yeah, that's a good point. Shadowing is one thing we can offer. That generally would be a shorter term thing. Shadowing plus, because we bring an intern in to do some work, there's going to be a certain amount of shadowing and just getting exposed to what goes into a typical day, a typical week, what the work is. So that, yes, and the more that there can be, like I said, something for the young person to sink their teeth into and try to accomplish, whether it's a research project, whether it's trying to help build a case for something. It's all good, it really is.
Yeah. What actions as mayor, and what have you done, and what will you do if you win re-election for a 4-year term, to keep young people in the city and to live, work, and raise families? And
Yeah, so let me try to touch on a couple things there. You know, one is housing and opportunities to live in the community affordably, and two is job opportunities, right? Trying to ensure that there's a strong local economy. So, as you pointed out earlier, I'm in my 12th year as mayor, so we've done a lot of this work already. I'll say on the economic opportunity front, right now we're working on writing a new economic development action plan. And the main goal there is to really help our local businesses to thrive and succeed. And, you know, and when they do, whether they be a small business with one employee to a, you know, our largest businesses in town may have, I'd be guessing, 50, 60, 100 employees. Excellus is one of the bigger ones, and they have more than that. But, you know, whether it be a very small, locally owned mom and pop, whether it be a larger company that has multiple sites and maybe a Beverly headquarters or a headquarters somewhere else that has a Beverly operation. Lots of great opportunities. So the Economic Development Action Plan is one way to try to help promote and facilitate a stronger local economy. Another piece is we've worked to bring some really great companies to Beverly. Mm-hmm. And during my time as mayor, we brought 3 significant companies in, 2 up at Cherry Hill and 1 up at Dunham Ridge, which is the Cummings property off of Dunham Road that used to be, for people old enough, used to be the worldwide headquarters of Hasbro and Parker Brothers Games. But at any rate, Krona is a company, high-level manufacturing, that they manufacture flow meters that measure flow of water for a lot of institutional uses. High-Res Bio is a company also up at Cherry Hill that they develop a lot of cancer research type of equipment. And then Freudenberg is a medical supply company. And all 3 of those were in the region, but not in Beverly. And they outgrew the sites they were in. And they didn't really want to leave the North Shore region to go out of region, but they needed more space. So fortunately, we had land at Cherry Hill, and as I said, up at Dunham Ridge, to accommodate those companies. And they're really high quality, you know, clean manufacturing, a lot of research, a lot of engineering and scientists, et cetera. And then the 4th one, I said 3, but the 4th one is Harmonic Drive, who also needed to stay in region, and they've expanded significantly. They built a much bigger building in Beverly at Dunham Ridge, and now they're building a second Beverly building with, again, more jobs, more high quality jobs, for a lot of great equipment, a lot of, you know, really, it's what we say clean manufacturing. It's manufacturing that doesn't pollute in the process. So a lot of great jobs. So that's on the economic front. On the housing front, you know, we wrote a new master plan, a planning master plan in the late 2010s over a couple of years. Lots of great community involvement and guidance. And we reaffirmed what the city had been doing for decades, which is to focus our economic growth targets on land that was already developed. We only have a certain amount of green space. Most of it, thankfully, a lot of it's protected. Some isn't protected, but we want to try to get it there. So we don't want to see what remains of our woods cut down for more buildings. So a lot of reinvestment in already developed areas and heavily around the Beverly Depot train station, because that's where it makes most sense to try to put more housing and site more local businesses, is where people can walk to public transportation. So that's been something, and along the way, we have strengthened a couple of times our inclusionary zoning ordinance, which requires that any building larger than 5 or 6 units of housing have some affordable housing, be they apartments or condos. And that helps to create a larger supply of housing for people who, you know, may well be working 1 job, 2 jobs, and still can't afford to break into private housing, whether it be to afford a rent or to own. So we've done a lot of that. We've supported and helped to realize a lot of new senior affordable housing, 85 apartments at the old Briscoe School, forever affordable for seniors in Beverly. And we need to be able to do more of that, because a lot of the starter homes that somebody might want to buy, you know, break into owning a house, owning a condo, a lot of those people have raised their families in, and they're older, and they want to downsize, but we got to find them a place in Beverly so they don't have to move out of town if they want to, if they're Beverly people and want to keep on being Beverly people. And one of the great things in Beverly is, as a community, over the decades, over the centuries, Beverly has always been a home that when people find Beverly and decide this is a place I want to live, whether it's short-term or long-term, there's an ability to do it. There's an ability to find a place in Beverly to call home. And many, many people, once they find Beverly, never want to leave. And that speaks also to that ability for people who grow up here to want to live here as an adult. And that goes back to creating more housing, turning some housing over that's more suitable for young families. So if somebody's an empty nester and now they're in a bigger house, finding those opportunities for seniors to sell that house to a younger family and find another place that's not as big, that isn't as much work for them. And so, that's a lot of the work that we're trying to do and trying to promote and support the right kind of housing in Beverly. One last point on housing is, we've had a public conversation and have another one coming up to talk about the Family Dollar store building downtown. And we never bought it to own it forever, right? Always the plan has been to turn around and sell it so that we can get the first floor commercial retail up and running and vibrant for what we in the downtown need, and then some housing above. And one of the things we're looking at for housing is affordable condos, so home ownership, for people who are making just under 80% of the regional income. So if you're a family of four and you're earning $132,000, you're at 80%. If you're an individual earning $92,000 a year, you're at 80%. So for people in that range of income, that's a good salary, a good annual income, but people still can't get into the private housing market because of how expensive it is. So we're hoping that one of the outcomes of selling and seeing that property redeveloped is we're going to see some more affordable homes built in the coming years. So all of that is an ongoing effort to try to make sure that as people grow up, you can come back or you can stay and you can have a way to make Beverly your home long term.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my third question, which was how will you make housing more affordable to young renters in the city, which is an issue that was very close to me because my brother is 20 years old. He didn't go to college or anything, decided not to, but he's finding it very hard and difficult to move out and live in Beverly, in Gloucester, in really anywhere in the North Shore because it's so hard and very unaffordable.
Yes. Yes, that's, part of the answer is more supply. And one of our challenges is just where and how to do it. So we've really focused in the downtown because the train is meant to not take everybody on every trip they need. It doesn't mean somebody's not going to have a car, but it means that if you can do more of what you need to do and want to do by walking because you're already in the downtown, or by getting on a train, if you go to North Shore Community College in Lynn, you can take the train there. If you need to go to a doctor's appointment, up and down the train line. That's a big, important piece of helping our community to be more long-term, strong, and sustainable, is making sure that the train system gets modernized so that there'll be more frequent trains, and then you have to connect from train stations to where you really want to go. So, for example, I just mentioned North Shore Community. That's great if you go to the Lynn campus. But if you want to go to Salem State University in Salem, you get off the train in Salem and you're still, almost 2 miles from campus. So if we can get the train line modernized, which is on the state's agenda, and it's really, supposed to be happening in the coming handful of years, it'll include adding a new station right next to Salem State University. It hopefully can include adding a new station in Revere to connect to the Blue Line, to connect to the airport into downtown Boston. So if that's your choice, you don't have to stay on and go to North Station and then navigate around from there. There's a lot to, trying to help a place be vibrant and affordable. One of our greatest challenges as a big region, Greater Boston region, is that we are one of the great places in the world for companies to start, to grow, for people to choose to live and work and raise a family, to go to school, to find great medical care, and the ability to move around our region, the ability to, improve our roads, improve our intersections, get more people out of cars for more of what they need because the transit is going to be good enough, frequent enough, reliable enough to get them to places. And then we need that connectivity from downtown Beverly Depot to other places around town, to other communities. So there's bus and there's van and there's, other ways of moving around. these are big investments. They take some federal help and they take some state commitment. We've been working on them, closely with officials at those levels, and I really feel we're much closer to getting some of those improvements in Beverly as a result of that work.
All right. What do you think could be done in your position as mayor to incentivize small businesses in the city to hire more young people, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds?
Can I have some thoughts, but I want to ask you, what is the experience that you're hearing of essentially high school age, Beverly, young folks in trying to get jobs? Are there not jobs to apply for? Because my sense is there always a need to fill jobs locally by a lot of our small businesses, and it's hard to find people.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think I work at Shaw's, and Shaw's hires a lot of young people because you could be 14 and up.
You can start a little bit younger,
yeah.
right?
But the problem is not everyone can work at Shaw's or Henry's. They hire at, I think, 15 in their bakery. Not everyone can work at the places, and sometimes it can be hard to find transportation to those places. And I feel like those in like Market Basket are really like the only kind of places that hire young people, because when I was job hunting when I first turned 14, it was hard to find anywhere else besides that.
Yeah.
But I feel like if small businesses could be incentivized to, make their business more open to those teenagers, they would get a lot more business.
It's very interesting because, part of, as I looked at the question, was thinking about it, some of it may be job training. Some of it may be just kind of experience and time in the workforce. Because some are, I know, for example, coffee shops, restaurants, retail stores, always looking, right? And yet, they have to be particular about who they hire because they're all service-driven, and if people don't have a good experience, they may not come back. So maybe some of what we're talking is, finding more job training opportunities so that people may be ready a little sooner, a little younger, to really fly in those kind of jobs that that the bosses need to look and say, this young person's representing me well. People are happy with their experience.
Yeah, I also think it goes hand in hand with just how many small businesses and state laws, like how old a person. I can't be below the age of 16 and work in the food service industry and work with food and stuff. But I think I can be a busser, a busboy. I could be a host at like a restaurant and stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of jobs that I can and both can't do, for like the law to comply with it. But
that's a fascinating one, because I know in a few minutes we'll talk about the youth council, right? And because I want to, and you probably do too. But changing laws, one of the first things to try to figure out is what's the rationale behind the law reading as it does. What were the public policy goals? Have things changed so that the goals might be revisited? What kind of opposition or resistance would there be to changing a given law? The thought that you have to be a certain age for certain jobs, those reasons may well still exist. And then it's not a waste of time to research that and to tug at it and see whether it makes sense to change. Can be a part of the learning and can help anyone who's involved in that kind of a process learn where to focus their energies next as well. It's a fascinating one, it really is.
Yeah, I think that, obviously changing a law can be hard and, stuff, but I feel like if more young people, me, other people, wanted more jobs and wanted more options, then they can do their research, reach out to the right people, Senator Lovely and others, and, just kind of connect and see what we can change.
Absolutely. I'll wait till you ask. I want to talk about the youth council, but go ahead. Maybe that's, let's talk about it now, should we?
Yeah, I mean, what specific pieces of legislation have you introduced or will you introduce that have directly affected the youth, obviously, the youth council? And
yeah, I mean, I think, when you ask about what would we want to introduce as new legislation, be that a local ordinance or a state piece of state legislation. I really want to be guided on that. You know, the youth council, which we both know, you as a student really advocated for the creation of a youth council, which was, the timing was really good because I had brought back from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, you know, the youth council model that they promote for active, you know, young people learning about government at all levels and kind of rolling sleeves up and getting involved. And so we launched last year, the first year of our youth council. So you, Jeremy, were as a freshman in high school, one of the members, and I know you're participating again this year as we kick off. So one of the things that I saw in our first year was it was important to help all the youth council members go through the process of learning about government at all three levels, learning about how things work. And my goal and hope this year is that with several of you coming back and some new members feeding into the process, that one of the things that will come out of it is you all will decide that there's something you want to really take on, get behind, and do when it comes to, you know, impacting, whether it be budgetary and policy decisions that don't require a change in law, or whether it does require some kind of a legal move. Now, we just were talking about, you know, the ability to work in certain jobs at certain ages and whether that makes sense to revisit. But, you know, what else is, go ahead, sorry.
Well, going back to like young people and jobs, Beverly is one of the only cities that does renewing work permits every year. So I think if we could change that to make it every 4 years, every 2 years, like Danvers is every 4 years. Just
For
like,
a young person,
yeah,
to renew a work permit.
So when I was 14, September last year, I had to get a work permit, and then I had to renew it this year. And I think that's it's a kind of long and tedious process. It can be.
I was just going to ask you that. If, you know, the fact that we require it annually, is there a bar to doing it? Is it too hard to do?
It's not much of a bar. It's just that you have to get a signature from a pediatrician if you're 14 or 15, and or like a doctor, and then it's just a lot of like steps, I feel. And then you have to bring it to the school, and then they have to sign it, and then they give it back to you, and then you bring it to your work, and it can be hard. And I just feel like if you do it once, you should only have to do it once.
You can't work anywhere legally, like till you're 14. And you don't need, or you do need that permit beyond 16. You still need it?
You need it, but you don't need a doctor's signature for it.
Gotcha.
Because, the signature is just to require, like, say, this person can work and do this.
I guess that goes to that earlier conversation. What's the rationale behind requiring certain things periodically? And if we all together look at it and satisfy ourselves that doing it once is sufficient, then it's easier to make a change in that, you know, in that permitting process. If we sit down with other people who are engaged in it, who are maybe more expert and more experienced in that process and why it exists, they may make a very persuasive argument to keep it the same. But I think that's a great example of what we should look at together.
Because, you know, other cities, they do it differently than us, and we're really the only city that does it every year instead of every 4 or 2.
So I would say, let's look at it together. There may be a good reason why we won't change. There may be a good reason why they do it differently that we might look at and embrace.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. That's great. And then, you know, I don't know what else the council might come up with, but there seem to be lots of opportunities for you as a group to say, okay, we can work on not 25 different things, but 2 or 3 different things at once that all might, you know, be policy focused over the course of this year.
Definitely. What other issues concerning the youth have you done or will you do in your first 4-year term as mayor? You know, the youth council is one of them, but obviously there's a whole bunch of others.
So I'm going to say the most important things to impacting our youth, because I'm looking at our time, we're getting close. I'd say first and foremost is always education. You know, and I have, as mayor, always been committed to the Beverly Public Schools. My 5 brothers and I went through. My mom taught in the Beverly Public Schools. I taught in the Beverly Public Schools, and I coached in them for a decade. And have always tried to focus on trying to make our schools as strong as they possibly can be. And one thing that I did when I first became mayor is I started a summer learning program. And so now for 11 summers in a row, we have provided a summer program for rising first, second, and third graders whose teachers and literacy coaches have identified as really needing help to prevent summer learning loss and needing help to kind of get caught up on the literacy skills, because that's the biggest marker for success in school, or one of the biggest, is to be able to read at grade level. So we've done that for 11 years. We have invested heavily in our schools every year. And I know last year we all had a hard year because of the teacher strike. And what was at the root of it was, a big part of it was trying to make sure that our educators are sufficiently compensated. And we had already made significant increases year over year in the schools, but last year we doubled down. We looked really hard, and we put the money on the table that has made our educators' contracts this time around really on a par with their peers around the region. And they're very strong contracts. In fact, this current budget year, 97% of every new dollar in the city, right, is going to educate our kids, meaning we're spending $7.8 million more this year than we did last year as a result of Proposition 2.5 and new growth, state aid. 7.6 out of the 7.8 is going to educate our kids. And that's really the commitment that I've always had. And I think that it is the integral, key, most important thing that we do for our youth, is to try to make sure that you all have great educations and the best launching point possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say that on the topic of education, real quick, that I do think that there should be more, civic classes and government education classes. Here at Beverly High, we don't have an AP Gov class.
Okay.
I feel like that would be a useful class to have and learn about. Some other classes, we take one civics class in 8th grade, and that's basically it. Until senior year, we have Preserving Democracy, which is like our REACH program and stuff, I think.
Yeah.
It's more.
There are more electives than there are requirements, is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's all based on the state, requirements. As you said, the 8th grade civics is a state requirement. So looking for us to offer more along the way of optional or elective classes in that area. That's a great point. It's a great idea.
Yeah, just get youth more involved in government and just education around it, because I do my best to try to educate the youth on local government, but if it's a class that they can take or get put into, then that goes into then they have to learn about local government, and maybe they'll find an interest in it or want to find a new career path for them.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that's, civics is something that the whole of society needs more, more awareness and understanding of too. So that's great. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions I have.
Okay. Maybe the last thing I'll say is, to support you all as our youth is for us as the adults, we're running the show now, but you will eventually, right? Part of our responsibility is to make sure that we take care of the things that we're obligated to. So, we spend a lot of time and energy and a lot of resources on trying to make sure our infrastructure is strong and sound. Try to make sure that our parks, our beaches, we're trying to work to ensure that as storm surge flooding is a problem on our coastline, that we protect and that we improve, right, the safety along our coastline so we can enjoy it and use it for years to come. We do that now. There's less for you to worry about when you all kind of assume the reins of running our city and running our community and running the community. So that's another piece at any rate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being
Jeremy,
on.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate being here.
All right. I want to thank the candidates again for being here, and thank BevCam for allowing me to do this interview. I ask the viewers to please go out and vote on November 4th. They can. Thank you.